and welcome to the Dynamic Duel Podcast, a weekly show where we review superhero films and debate the superiority between Marvel and DC by comparing their characters in stat-based battle simulations. I'm Johnny DC.
And I'm his twin brother, Marvelous Joe.
And what a time to be a DC fan! Oh boy! This is like an all-DC episode practically. I'm so excited.
No, there's Marvel news. There's Marvel news to talk about.
Like, two things. Barely. Of course, this episode we will be reviewing Deathstroke Knights and Dragons, the animated film. But we're also going to be talking about all the stuff that came out of the DC FanDome, including the Batman trailer, which Harry's still a Marvel fan after that trailer.
Oh, because I've already seen it done before in the Daredevil Netflix show.
Shut up, no you haven't. We're going to be talking about Wonder Woman 1984, that trailer. We're going to be talking about Zack Snyder's Justice League official teaser. In the middle of this, we're going to be talking about some Marvel stuff. I guess, someone's directing Kraven the Hunter and Olivia Wilde's directing Spider-Woman. Who cares? We're going to be moving on to the good stuff with Suicide Squad's exclusive sneak peek and the roll call videos. We're going to be talking about the Flash movie and how Ben Affleck is returning for that, including some concept art for that. We're going to be talking about concept art for Black Adam and the JSA roster. And we're going to be talking about the video game news for Gotham Knights and Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. It's a lot of content.
Yeah, I mean, if you're into that sort of thing,
Yeah, we all are. Don't lie to yourself.
There's a lot of DC fans out there that are excited right now. But if you remember from last year, San Diego Comic-Con 2019, which DC skipped, you'll remember just how much Marvel owned them last year. So I don't consider this really a DC win, just so much as DC showing up to the game late. Because last year, Marvel announced their entire Phase 4 slate, as well as all of their new Disney Plus television shows that are coming out. DC didn't have anything. So kudos on you for finally catching up.
I don't think we just caught up. I think we're like miles ahead of you right now.
That's cute. You
can't bring me down, dude. I am way too high up on Cloud 9. We're going to be breaking down all of the news items from the DC FanDome pretty soon in the episode, followed by our review of Deathstroke Knights and Dragons. As always, our segment times are in our episode description, so feel free to jump around to whatever part of the episode you want to jump to.
Just a quick reminder to you guys to please subscribe to our show if you haven't already. And if you have, please help us grow our podcast audience by giving us a rating or a review on whatever platform you're listening to us on, or by sharing us with your fellow DC and Marvel fans. But with that out of the way,
quick to the No Prize.
A No Prize is an award Marvel used to give out up until the 90s to fans. Our version, the Dynamic Duel No Prize, is a digital award we post on social media that Jonathan personally draws for those who we feel gave the best answer to our question of the week. Last week's question was in response to news that DC is pretty much going under by laying off most of its staff. A lot of people lost their jobs, and it did leave us questioning the future of the comic book industry. So we asked, how do you primarily read comic books? Do you buy weekly printed issues, the paperback collections? Do you buy them digitally, or other? We got quite a few answers for this particular question of the week, but we're going to go ahead and run down our honorable mentions before naming the No Prize winner.
So our first honorable mention goes to Nathaniel Wagner, who said that he prefers to buy physical comic books. He loves being able to feel the battles unfold between his hands, and another bonus is that he smells comics. Yes, he knows it's weird, but he sniffs comic books.
Yeah, and I wanted to give this particular answer the honorable mention because it just came off so creepy. Because, we all love the smell of toner, we all love to smell comic books, but the fact that Nathaniel wanted to clarify that he wasn't a weirdo because he did that was just hilarious to me. Even though, of course, we all love to smell comic books because they just have a really good smell.
Yeah, I love the smell. I love the crisp texture of a newly printed comic in your hand. There's nothing like it.
I like the shine that they give off when they're bagged and boarded, in the plastic.
Yeah.
Our next honorable mention goes to Ken Johnson, who said that he'll read digital issues for back catalogs, but he does buy the weekly prints more to help his local comic book shop stay open, because with the coronavirus, they need all the help that they can get. And not just because of coronavirus, also because of the future of the industry with actions like what DC did last week.
Yeah, the data that was released during the whole layoff kind of showed that no one's really buying comics from comic book shops anymore. More people are buying actually trade paperbacks from bookstores like Barnes & Noble, which I found really surprising. They do that a lot more than they even buy digitally. So I love comic book shops. I love going in there. I love going through the back issues and seeing all the merchandise that they have. The more that we could support them, the better. Our final honorable mention goes to Matt Estes, who said that he primarily uses Marvel Unlimited. However, once a month or so, he likes to take his kiddos to the shop and they pick up a few physical comics. His kids always look forward to comic book day.
And you know that if your kids are looking forward to going to the comic book store, that you're doing something right as a parent.
Yes.
So good job, Matt Estes. I also primarily use Marvel Unlimited. It's been quite a few years since I've stepped into a comic book shop to actually buy comics. In the past few recent times that I went to the comic book store, it was to buy board games.
And same here. I get most of my comics from DC Universe now. Of course, they get their titles late, so I can't keep up with the current storylines that are being printed right now. And I don't enjoy that.
But it's a sacrifice that we make for the convenience, basically.
Yeah.
We had a lot of people who answered that they read their comic books either on Comixology or DC Universe or Marvel Unlimited. We also had a few people that mentioned that they actually read their comic books on pirated free websites, which this podcast will never condone. Like, we get it. Comic books do cost a lot of money, especially when you want to read all the different titles that you're interested in. Whether it comes to comic books or movies or any kind of digital media of any kind, as graphic artists ourselves, Jonathan and I are huge supporters of compensating the creative people that work on this content. They can't do it for free.
Real quick, we want to give a shout out to everyone who gave us an answer for this week's question of the week. So a special thank you to John Starosky, Nightwing Superman, Sana Farhumand, Alex Fowler, Isaiah Bethune, Jared, Mark1684, Jace Crump, Michael Haggerty, Brandon Estergaard, Joel Seagrave, Dustin Balcom, John Speas, Miggy Madigian, and Kelvin John Della Merced.
Thank you, guys. We really appreciate it. But the winner of this week's No Prize is Calvin Mims, who said that half the time when he's buying comics, he doesn't know what to buy. But he does love audiobooks because he feels they have so much more to offer than comics or movies. Because the visuals that you see aren't limited to a movie budget or a piece of paper. It's only limited by your imagination, which gives you everything you want in a story.
And I loved that answer because most of the times when I consume books right now, it is through audio form. Right now I'm listening to the Mistborn series actually via audiobook. It's really good, and that was actually a recommendation from one of our executive producers, Jace Crump. So shout out to him, and thank you for that. But this was actually my favorite answer because during the DC FanDome event, one of my favorite panels was with Neil Gaiman. And they were talking about, his Sandman Universe comic series, but also the Audible Sandman series, which I totally forgot about. They went behind the scenes with the cast, and everything like that. And I remember when I was younger, I had the audiobook versions for The Death of Superman and No Man's Land for Batman. And those were incredible. I loved listening to those.
Yeah, as long as you know what all the characters look like, I think that audio is a very effective medium for storytelling. And I didn't quite get the full grasp of that until I recently listened to Marvel's podcast called Marvels. And in that was a scene where the Fantastic Four were fighting Galactus, and it was in stereo sound, and it was really well produced. And in my head, it played out even better than it did in the Jack Kirby Stan Lee runs on the comics, and it certainly played out better than the Rise of the Silver Surfer movie. So I think if you have the imagination for it, audio can be so effective at telling these larger-than-life superhero stories.
Yeah, Marvels, I remember listening to a bit of The Long Night, the Wolverine podcast, and that was great. One of the reasons Superman really rose into popularity was because he got a radio show pretty early on in his comic career, and people just loved that. So many things were born out of the radio show, like Kryptonite, like the whole faster than a speeding bullet, able to leap tall buildings sayings. It's just really convenient because you could listen to something and do something else, like drive or do the dishes or something like that. You can't read and do the dishes or drive.
Yeah, it's a very passive form of media, but let's stop jerking off audio and get back to the show. Congrats again to Calvin Mims.
Yeah, you win this week's No Prize. If you, the listener, want a shot at winning your own No Prize, stay tuned to later on this episode when we'll be asking another question of the week.
And now that that's done,
on to the news. Okay, so the DC FanDome, my family was super pumped for this. We all put on our superhero shirts, we all grabbed a superhero action figure, and we just sat our asses down on the couch, airplayed the event to our TV, and just watched all 8 hours. It was a lot to get through at some points, but by the end, I was just floored with how awesome this whole event was.
I mean, I watched part of it, and then I got bored, so I turned it off.
I could see that. There were definitely some spots where I was like, well, I guess this is a good time to break for lunch. But a lot of the stuff that I didn't think I would find interesting, I actually was glad I sat through it. My most favorite event, though, was the thing they saved for last, the Batman panel with Matt Reeves. We just got so much information, and we got the most badass superhero trailer of any superhero trailer in the history of trailers.
I guess. It was pretty good. I'm not gonna lie.
It's incredible. It's incredible. Before they showed the trailer, Matt Reeves had so much to say about the Batman movie. He went on at length about his approach and his inspirations and what he wants to do with this story.
Yeah, apparently it takes place in Batman's second year of being Batman. So it's not Batman year one, and he's not completely wet behind the ears, but he's still kind of building his reputation.
Yeah, it's not an origin story, but he's still new to this. He's still capable of making mistakes. He's still learning the game, essentially. So yeah, the movie is year 2 Batman, but apparently the TV show that's coming to HBO Max, the one that's focusing on the Gotham City Police Department, that will be year 1. So the show will actually be like a prequel series to the movie.
Oh, interesting.
It looks like corruption is going to be like a main component of the storyline, and somehow Bruce and his family will be tied into that in some way. It sounds very Court of Owls, but we know from the trailer that the Riddler is going to be the main villain. And holy cow, this is a really interesting take on the Riddler. It reminds me a lot of like Seven, the girl with the dragon tattoo. It's just very like David Fincher-esque.
Oh yeah, totally. I also get strong vibes of some of other Matt Reeves' work, like the vampire movie Let Me In.
Oh yeah.
I thought that was an amazing adaptation of the Swedish film Let the Right One In. It was a very moody piece of work, and I would definitely classify this trailer as moody.
Oh man, the tone for this trailer was so dark and so mysterious and just so badass. I feel like it's the tone that I've always wanted to see from a Batman movie.
Yeah, because it's a very real-world approach like what Nolan took, but it's also very neo-noir.
Yeah, if you take what Christopher Nolan did and you merged it with what Todd Phillips did for the Joker and put them together, that's kind of the tone I'm getting from this trailer. You know, the Christopher Nolan Batman films were inspired by like Blade Runner and the movie Heat. In the panel, Matt Reeves was talking about how his inspirations for this film were Taxi Driver and Chinatown. Those two films are very noir, so I think those are fantastic inspirations. I almost wish that this was set in the same universe as the Joker.
And you never know, it might just turn out that way. If Joaquin Phoenix's Joker was indeed an unreliable narrator, there's a lot of potential for a crossover between these two films.
From the opening moments of the trailer, when we, just see the bright red logos come on screen and we hear the tape, something nefarious is going to happen. But to see that guy's face get taped up was so sinister.
What do you think about the look of the Riddler in this? It's not very comic booky.
Well, I mean, none of the villains have very comic booky looks in this trailer. I don't think that's the Riddler's final form. I don't think that's Catwoman's final form or the Penguin's final form. In fact, Matt Reeves said as much during the panel. They've only shot about a quarter to a third of the film so far. So the fact that they were able to get this trailer out of that, it just blows my mind. By the end of the film, who knows, the Riddler may look very different.
We get our first look at Commissioner Gordon, played by Jeffrey Wright. He looks pretty damn solid as the character. And he presents the Batman with a riddle from the Riddler.
Yeah, and the riddle mentions how he wants to play a game with Batman. Oh, it's so good. And Batman, oh my gosh, he looks so cool on screen. Like, it wasn't sold by the set photos that we saw that were leaked, but seeing it on film in this trailer, this is the coolest Batman suit I think that we've seen so far on screen.
It's definitely not better than Ben Affleck's Batman suit from Batman v Superman.
It's not as comics accurate as that, but to me, this is more like the Arkham Knight version, like the video game version of his suit. It looks like there's technical components to it, yet it's super streamlined. He has a really great silhouette in this costume for something that appears to be so heavily armored.
That's true, and we see how armored it is when he gets shot point blank with a gun later on in the trailer, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Yeah, that hit him like right in the chest plate.
What do you think of Robert Pattinson's Bruce Wayne look? For me personally, that was the most iffy thing about this whole movie. I'm sold on the rest. I'm not sold on Bruce Wayne because he just looks so emo and dark.
You could say that.
And brooding. Like, Bruce Wayne is supposed to be disguised, right? But if you told me to pick out which one of these guys is Batman out of a lineup and I saw Robert Pattinson, I'd be like, that motherfucker right there is Batman. Look how brooding he is. I really like Christian Bale's approach to the character of Bruce Wayne and how it was all just a facade, because we know that Batman really is his true self.
Well, you're judging a book based off the cover. We don't know what kind of performance he's going to give as Bruce Wayne yet.
Look at the hair! He looks like Tobey Maguire did in Spider-Man 3 when he went evil. He's trying to look dark and edgy. He's supposed to be this playboy that nobody would suspect is Batman.
Well, yeah, I mean, that was heavily suggested in comics like Batman Year One and things like that, and that's one way to interpret it. Another way to interpret it is that Bruce Wayne is this tortured soul, and maybe he just walks around with his hair in front of his eyes so that no one, pays attention to him. Like an emo goth kid. Having your parents killed in front of you might turn you into one of those.
That's fair. I can't argue with that.
Ultimately, we don't know how he's going to play the character. I'll reserve judgment. For right now, what I'm saying, I don't hate it. It's something unique. And I think ultimately, at the end of the day, Robert Pattinson is a really talented actor. So I don't think performance-wise, he's going to let us down.
What did you think of Catwoman?
I really hope that's not her final cowl. It's like, why don't you buy a mask that goes over your entire face? Why just cover the nose?
Yeah, I mean, that's not safe for coronavirus. But I don't know if that was like a stylized balaclava that she was wearing, or if it just happened to look that way the way it was sitting on her head.
I mean, Zoe Kravitz looks cool. It's just the mask looks awkward. I'm guessing at some point, her mask will be leather and she'll have goggles. So, at least fingers crossed. Now, as for the Penguin, when we saw leaked photos of Colin Farrell on set, he had white hair and a suit and an umbrella. But there's like this chubby figure who looks a lot like the Penguin who's popping up in the trailer a few times. He says, "This guy's crazy," as he's in a car chase with Batman. A lot of people are saying that guy is the Penguin and that's Colin Farrell in makeup. And if it is, he is unrecognizable.
Yeah, that's a pretty insane makeup job right there. It kind of makes you wonder why Matt Reeves just didn't hire an actor that looked like that as opposed to putting Colin Farrell in so much makeup.
Well, maybe he couldn't find a good actor who did look like that. I think it's the Penguin. I hope it's the Penguin. And even then, by the end of the film, maybe he'll wear a top hat and a monocle. Maybe that'll be his final form. At this point, he doesn't like to be referred to as the Penguin, according to Matt Reeves. So we'll see how that changes, maybe.
Let's get to the money shot of the trailer, when he's being approached by these Joker-looking goons.
Yeah, it looks like the Joker gang is in this film. That's crazy. I did not expect that. It's pretty cool to see some kind of homage, to the Clown Prince of Crime. But when he asks him, who are you? Then Batman just beats the fuck out of him. That was crazy.
That was so nuts. I mean, it was amazing. I must have rewound that part and watched it 30 different times.
And it went on for so long.
Yeah.
I was like, damn, stop.
He's already dead. But yeah, he blocked with one hand, then blocked with the other. Then it was hook, backhand,
arm
hook,
break,
hook, hook, hook. And I'm like, this guy, he was already hospitalized by the second backhand.
He is not recovering from this.
No.
And it was so cool the way he said, I am vengeance. Just without, any theatricality, without any ego. He was just telling them straight, I am vengeance.
And they're like, oh my God, it's Vengeance Man.
I thought he was going to say, I am Batman. But, he still could finish the line with, I am the Knight, I am Batman. How cool would that be?
Yeah, that would be pretty cool.
It looks like the Batcave is going to be, an abandoned train station. That's what I thought it was. That's what it looks like to me.
The Batmobile looks pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm still waiting to see what it's going to look like seeing the Batman through the windshield. To me, I still think that's going to look really goofy. But the car itself is pretty sweet. I agree. To me, what really sold the whole vibe of this trailer, though, was the music in the background. Elements of the Nirvana song, Something in the Way, played throughout this trailer, which is a really, really good, haunting song.
The vibe that I got when they were showing the Batman title card at the end of this, it was very creepy. It was pretty spot on. I really like the way they revealed that title card, especially the flat, gritty Batman logo behind it.
Yeah. The trailer ends with the Riddler talking to Bruce Wayne through a computer. And it looks like Bruce Wayne is wearing eyeshadow. And he pulls it off. It just makes the character look even more dark.
He kind of reminds me of the Winter Soldier.
Yes, yeah, exactly. That kind of vibe, for sure. Except cooler, because he's fucking Batman.
I don't know. I mean, Batman will beat up a dude, but Winter Soldier will straight up murder his ass.
Don't try to compare the two. They're not even at the same level for them to be compared, so...
You let me compare them 5 seconds ago.
I'm talking about eyeshadow, dude. Eyeshadow.
Right.
So the trailer ends with question marks instead of 2s for the release date of 2021.
Are you sure that was 2021 and not 3041? I'm really looking forward to watching that movie then.
The question marks are 2s.
Are they, though?
Yes.
All right.
It was definitely, hands down, the best way to end the DC FanDome. But let's move on to how they started the event with Wonder Woman 1984. Gal Gadot, director Patty Jenkins, Chris Pine, Kristen Wiig, and Pedro Pascal all showed up for the panel. And it just looks like they get along so well with each other. They were joking around. It was just good times. Linda Carter made an appearance. They answered a few fan questions, and it all led up to a pretty awesome trailer. This is only the second trailer that we've received for this film. There hasn't been much marketing for it, which is understandable because of COVID. It's delayed everything. They don't want to waste all of their marketing assets and then have the film not come out.
Makes sense. The trailer starts off in beautiful Themyscira, and I like the interplay between the gladiatorial games that they're showing on the island as Diana's a girl with 1984 Diana chasing down a villain.
I'm not sure if she's chasing down a villain or trying to chase after like the invisible jet, but yeah, it's a nice juxtaposition.
Is that what she connects to with her lasso?
Yes.
Okay, because there was another shot later on where it looks like, yeah, that's what she's doing.
Exactly. She latches her lasso onto like a lot of things. The plane, lightning.
Do you think that that's how she gets around? Or do you think she'll actually be flying the invisible jet in the course of this film?
I think Chris Pine is the pilot of the invisible jet. I don't think she actually flies it. But that's only speculation because we haven't seen her do that yet. Again, this version of Wonder Woman doesn't fly. But, you know, she still holds her own.
She can jump far.
Yeah, she could definitely jump very far. But after we see her swinging from lightning, we see Maxwell Lord. It looks like he like hijacks a satellite or something to reach out to every single screen device in the world simultaneously. And he's asking people to make, you know, a wish, to ask for their heart's desire, essentially. And he's speaking from the White House. There's a number of scenes that take place in Washington, D.C. We see him in the White House. We see him on Air Force One. It really makes me wonder if Maxwell Lord is the president of the United States in this film.
Oh, maybe. During the Reagan era? You think he's like a Reagan substitute?
Well, I don't think it's any kind of coincidence that he sort of has like Trump hair in this film. If I were a betting man, I would say that Patty Jenkins is sort of trying to evoke Trump in Maxwell Lord as the president in this film.
Interesting take. I never really got that vibe, but I could kind of see it now that you're saying it.
And maybe Maxwell Lord wished to be president of the United States. You never know.
Yeah, maybe.
It would definitely make more sense of, you know, like why Diana's fighting in the White House and stuff like that.
Yeah. And why we see a bunch of military vehicles later on.
Right. So it looks like Diana wishes for Steve Trevor to come back, and we hear Kristen Wiig say that she wishes to be an apex predator. And that was a pretty cool line.
I don't know if she understood how that would manifest physically, but it kind of looks like she got what she wanted.
It's kind of like a be careful what you wish for kind of thing.
Yeah.
I imagine that's going to be a huge theme in this movie.
It looks like the entire world gets to wish, and I wonder how that will look within this film, like how that manifests if everybody gets their heart's desire.
Oh man, that would just be pure chaos. That would be a really interesting story.
What would you wish for?
World peace. Through the destruction of Marvel.
I would also wish for the end of DC.
Oh, then we all lose. Awesome. This, of course, is our first look at Kristen Wiig as Cheetah. In the first trailer, you know, she was very, like, bubbly and friendly. In this one, she plays off as a lot more sinister. And I knew that she was a good actress, but I'm really impressed to see how well it looks like she's pulling this character off. In the White House, when she's saying, "You were born with everything, and now it's my turn, get used to it," that was pretty cool. It looks like the cheetah could kind of go through like Wonder Woman's like force field bracelet thing.
Speaking of Diana's bracelets, there was a shot earlier in the trailer where she was blocking bullets that were being fired upon her by spinning her lasso, which I guess makes sense because the lasso is unbreakable. So if she spun it fast enough, she could probably use it as a shield. But why would she do that when she has her bracelets?
I don't know, because we've seen that before. So let's see something new.
I mean, I guess.
I thought it looked cool.
Well, yeah, it does look cool, but for me, it just didn't make sense.
Just fucking enjoy the film. Stop questioning everything. If something looks sufficiently cool enough, you don't have to question it. just roll with it, dude. You'll be happier that way.
Okay.
I thought the bit about radar was hilarious. Because, of course, radar wasn't invented back around when Steve was flying planes. So he doesn't know that he has to worry about it. And Wonder Woman's like, "Oh, I forgot to tell you. Radar."
Yeah, Chris Pine's comedic timing is pretty solid. Even with the end gag, when he's wearing the fanny pack and then the parachute pants. How he's just questioning everything.
Yeah, does everybody parachute? That was a pretty good gag. I don't think it was as good as the trash can joke from the first trailer, but it was still good.
What do you think of Cheetah's final form?
It's a lot more CG heavy than I wanted it to be or would have expected it to be, considering they've had this much time to work on it. To me, that doesn't look like Kristen Wiig. It doesn't look like Kristen Wiig's face, you know?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people are comparing it to Cats. I don't think it's that bad.
I think the special effects are pretty solid. I really like the shot where Wonder Woman like snatches her out of midair and slams her to the ground.
Yeah, of course, the cat always lands on her feet, so the cheetah just kind of like slides backwards, just growling. I doubt Kristen Wiig did the mocap for this because she just comes across as so like animalistic. But in that sense, I think they did a really good job capturing like the physicality of the character. I can't wait to see even more of like how she moves. Hopefully we'll see more.
Yeah, like in the daylight.
Yeah, something not so dark. But I don't know if we're going to get another trailer. I doubt we will. If anything, we'll get TV spots. And who knows how much more that'll show. Now, as of right now, Wonder Woman 1984 is still scheduled to be released in theaters on October 2nd. We'll see if it holds to that release date. I'm optimistic since the movie theaters have started reopening now. In fact, I'm seeing New Mutants in theaters this week. And I'm really looking forward to seeing Wonder Woman 1984 in theaters. Wonder Woman, of course, will also make an appearance in the Justice League film that's appearing on HBO Max in 2021. Now, the Justice League panel was the thing I was looking forward to the most, one of the things, for the DC FanDome. And it did not disappoint. The whole cast showed up. Henry Cavill, Ben Affleck, Gal Gadot, Ezra Miller, Ray Fisher. They all made an appearance. I guess Jason Momoa didn't. But everyone else made an appearance. Zack Snyder was there. They were all fielding him questions. It was awesome. It was just so cool to see all of them there together again.
Yeah, especially Ben Affleck. Although he didn't really comment on the Flash news that had come out earlier.
No, and I'm kind of glad that they didn't. I was kind of worried that when that was announced, and I think Vanity Fair broke that news, that that was going to be like one of the things spoiled, one of the surprises spoiled for the DC FanDome. But no, that was a solid piece of news that came out on its own outside of the convention. But yeah, Ben Affleck looks great. He looks like he's in better shape now than he was when he made the Justice League film.
I mean, he's stooping Ana de Armas, so, of course he feels pretty good.
And he probably needs to look good, too. He's like, shit, I need to lose this beer gut. But no, I'm really happy for him. I'm really happy that Henry Cavill is back. Again, it's just great to see everybody. I was glad to see Zack Snyder speak with people who are heavily influential in the Release the Snyder Cut movement. But of course, as Zack noted, we were all there to see the new trailer. And from the opening frame, when we see Darkseid, Uxas, just like slamming that weapon up close and all of his CGI glory.
Is glory the right term for that? Because the special effects looked a little unfinished.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're unfinished. Fuck you. Thanos looked fake in the early trailers, too.
Fair enough.
It's fucking Darkseid. Like, it's not a still photograph of him. It's not a painting on a cave wall of him. It's him. I just find it so incredible that there's so much footage that was shot that Joss Whedon didn't use. Like Wonder Woman going up to the arrow that was shot into Athena's temple.
Yeah, and a revisit to the Nightmare sequence where we see the Justice League Hall of Justice destroyed. And there was a little cool Easter egg there where we saw the Joker playing card fly by in the wind. And the fact that it's all new is remarkable. Like, it's like the world's largest deleted scene for the movie.
One thing they announced during the panel was that this was going to be a 4-hour movie released in 4 one-hour parts.
That's cool. I wonder if they're going to release all 4 parts simultaneously or if they're going to do it on a weekly basis over the course of a month.
I don't think it's going to be simultaneously. I think it's going to be released individually, probably weekly. But he did say that after that, they would release all 4 segments together in one super long film for people who want to see it that way. I'll be watching it week to week, personally. We get to see Kiersey Clemons as Iris West for the first time, being saved by Barry Allen in like some kind of car accident.
Why is he barefoot in that scene?
Because he wants to be. Don't question it. Gosh.
I just assumed that maybe he like destroyed his shoes as he was running because they weren't like the special material that his supersuit is made out of.
You know, that's actually probably accurate. That's probably why he's barefoot. He just like burned his shoes into the ground. Kiersey Clemons does look great as Iris West. I kind of hope they bring her back for the Flash film because there's been talk about recasting her. But, we'll see. I think with all the, Snyder Cut fans that are out there, they'll probably petition hard for her to return to the role. We get to see Desaad, friggin' Desaad from Apocalypse in this trailer, along with Steppenwolf's original look from the end of Batman v Superman. That's back in all of its crazy alien sharp metal glory.
Yeah, he looks much better.
I think one of the parts of the trailer that really stood out to me the most was the death of Silas Stone.
Yeah, that was interesting. They shot some kind of laser into a mother box and it just kind of melted him, which is bizarre. It looks like a very emotional moment.
For sure. And it's like, when was that going to happen in the movie? Holy shit. This film was going to be so much bigger than what we actually got.
I really got that vibe when we saw, I don't know what I was quite looking at, but it looked like it was the Flash traveling through the Speed Force.
Yeah, I think that was a Speed Force, and that was amazing. There was just like this nebulous sky all around him with like these particles just flying past him. And when he was running, like the floor was like crystalline. It was amazing. It's just amazing visuals. That, and when Cyborg is like directing a whole slew of missiles in some kind of direction, that was really interesting too, because he's not in his cyborg form. It must be like some kind of dream or something. It's really great to see Henry Cavill as Superman again without the shitty CG mouth. I'll watch the movie for that alone.
Yeah, it looks like he wears his black suit throughout the entire course of the film, though, because at the end shot where they're all standing up next to each other, next to the Flying Fox, he's still wearing that black suit, which may mean that he's just trying to build up as much solar energy as he can during the events of this film.
Yeah, which would make sense, I think.
He's still healing, basically.
Yeah, that final shot of them all standing together, like we know that's one of the last shots of the film. We know how this film is going to end already, and yet it's still going to be such a blast to watch because it's going to be this completely new thing.
What did you think about the music in this trailer and how Zack Snyder decided to go with the same Hallelujah song that he used in the sex scene in Watchmen?
It was an interesting choice. It was an inspired choice. It's not my favorite rendition of that song, but it is one that definitely reminds me of Zack Snyder.
It's one that definitely reminds me of that specific sex scene from Watchmen.
Which is not a bad thing, you know?
But he knew people would correlate that. Like, I guess I don't understand why he decided to go with a song that he's already done in such a notorious, I would say, scene.
I don't even think he was thinking about that. I think it's just a tongue-in-cheek way of saying, like, hallelujah, this is finally happening.
I just think that Zack Snyder only knows, like, 5 songs, and this is one of them.
Dude, don't be a hater, all right? The song worked. It fit. Even up to the very end. I loved the ending scene that this trailer closed on when Ezra Miller's like, you know, this guy has probably destroyed countless superpowered people on countless worlds. And Ben Affleck, totally killing it as Bruce Wayne, just says, I don't care how many demons he's killed on how many worlds. He's never fought us before. Not us united. Oh, I got chills. Such a great line and such a great delivery. As cool as the Batman trailer was, I'm still really going to miss Ben Affleck as Batman. I'm really glad he's returning for The Flash, but we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, but first we're going to get into the really important stuff about this episode. We got news from Deadline that Sony is going to be making a Kraven the Hunter film and a Spider-Woman film, both set in the Sony universe of Marvel characters.
Now, was it officially Spider-Woman? Because I remember reading an initial news article that was saying it was going to be a female-focused superhero film of a Spider-Man character, but not specifically Spider-Woman.
I mean, Olivia Wilde did post a tweet that was just an emoji of a spider, so I'm fairly certain that it is going to be a Spider-Woman movie. Now, we don't know which version of Spider-Woman this may be. It could be Jessica Drew's Spider-Woman. It could be Gwen Stacy's version of Spider-Woman, also known as Spider-Gwen. It could be another character like Aranya or Silk or somebody like that. I think that this is going to be a Jessica Drew movie. At least that's what I'm hoping for the most.
Yeah, she is the character that's most associated with Spider-Woman, so it would be nice.
Yeah, she's my favorite Spider-Woman. And she has a different power set from Spider-Man, unlike characters like Spider-Gwen.
You can almost see Olivia Wilde playing Jessica Drew.
Absolutely, yeah. And, you know, she's only like 36 years old, I think. She could still totally pull it off if she wanted to. Although in the Ultimate comic books, Jessica Drew is actually a clone of Peter Parker.
Oh, really?
So if they decided to go down that route, they wouldn't be able to cast Olivia Wilde. They would have to cast a younger actress who is about the same age as Tom Holland.
Yeah, his age or younger.
Yeah, it would be an interesting way to first approach the clone saga, perhaps, by making Jessica Drew his first clone. And they got a sample of his DNA, but only the X chromosome or something, and that's why the clone is female. And I think they could totally pull that off.
That actually sounds like a really smart way to do that if you're going to do it. Because if you did that, then that would set up future films like Scarlet Spider, Kane, a ton of characters.
Yeah, and kind of keep that whole clone stuff away from the primary Spider-Man movies.
Exactly, yeah.
Now, Olivia Wilde hasn't really directed too much. She did get a lot of critical acclaim for her movie that came out last year called Booksmart, which I have yet to see, but I've heard that it was really good.
Yeah, she's never directed like a big action genre film, but she's been in them, and she's worked with some of the best directors in the industry. So I'm not worried about her ability to pull this off. I'm actually pretty intrigued by it.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. Again, crossing our fingers for Jessica Drew. Now, the other movie that Sony announced is Kraven the Hunter, which actually I was super disappointed by because I was really crossing my fingers that Kraven would be the villain of the next Spider-Man movie, and this seems to confirm that that's not going to be the case.
Yeah, I was kind of bummed by it too. I was hoping the same thing.
That being said, if you had to choose any of Spider-Man's villains to make a movie about, other than, of course, Venom, I wouldn't have even chosen Morbius, but I think that Kraven would make a super compelling movie. Something along the lines of like The Most Dangerous Game, where it's a thriller where he's essentially hunting humans. He's a fascinating character if you've ever read Kraven's Last Hunt or any of the other arcs that he's been in. He's essentially a Russian aristocrat who has enhanced abilities that he uses as a hunter. And because he's such a good hunter, he can actually hunt superheroes. And Spider-Man ends up being his like ultimate target. Now, the director that was tapped for this film is Jace Chandor, who is an unknown to me. Essentially, he's directed like a handful of films, including Margin Call, All Is Lost, A Most Violent Year, Triple Frontier, and The Connection, a few of those which have appeared on Netflix. One of them which actually starred Ben Affleck.
Yeah, Triple Frontier, I've seen that. That's actually really good.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's a really good director.
He's directed a couple of movies with Oscar Isaac, so I wonder if they would cast him in the role. Personally, I'm really pulling for Luke Evans, who I think fits the character's look to a T.
Charlie Hunnam was in Triple Frontier too. He would probably make another good Kraven.
Yeah, I can see that. But yeah, Sony's doing a lot of work to really build on their stable of Marvel characters that they own the film rights to. And while I'm not like super excited for these particular movies, I think that they could do worse than choose characters like Spider-Woman, like Kraven the Hunter for solo films. We'll see how both of these movies develop through the years because, Sony does have a knack for announcing and then kind of abandoning projects like Silver and Black or the Aunt May movie, which was so stupid.
Yeah. I don't think they've done that lately, though, ever since they got connected back up with Marvel, so.
Yeah.
Anyway, enough of this Marvel shit. Let's get back to the DC FanDome. Next to Justice League, like the event I was looking forward to the most from the DC FanDome was the Suicide Squad. I think James Gunn is just like perfect for that movie in terms of humor, in terms of spectacle, in terms of like just comic book cred that we all know he has in making, his Marvel Guardian of the Galaxy films. The cast is just so big and so amazing, and we finally got to see who everyone is playing.
Yeah, I really like the roll call video that they came out with. It was just super stylized. I really like the style of this movie.
Yeah, it's very graphic.
Like the first film was stylish, but in ways that always didn't really make sense to me, specifically Joker and Harley Quinn. This movie, the characters all look like they are plucked straight from the comic books.
Well, David Ayer took like a gangster approach with his Suicide Squad film. James Gunn is not taking that approach. Marketing-wise, it's very, very similar. There's a lot of like text and a lot of graphics and colors and everything like that. But you're right, they are much more comic accurate. And we still have like those very stylized kind of like iconographic logos for each character, which I really liked. These character logos are pretty cool looking. So as we know, Viola Davis is returning as Amanda Waller. As is Joel Kinnaman, he's returning as Rick Flag. But again, much more comics accurate, even down to the yellow shirt. We weren't sure who Michael Rooker was going to play. I thought for a while he was going to play the Polka Dot Man until we learned that was being played by David Dastmalchian. It looks like Michael Rooker is going to play the character Savant, which is an interesting choice because Savant from the comics is supposed to be like this perfect looking kind of pretty boy. And Michael Rooker is anything but.
He might be a little bit past his prime here. I guess that's kind of the joke, huh?
It may just be. Like James Gunn probably told us, hey, you want to play this perfect pretty boy? And Michael Rooker would be like, count me in. Flula Borg is playing the character of Javelin. I don't know too much about Flula Borg. Apparently he has a pretty big following. Apparently the guy's just hilarious.
Oh, he's a comedic actor?
Yeah, from Germany. He was pretty funny in the panel with all of them there together.
There was a quote that he had in the behind the scenes featurette where he was talking about how like everything is exploding, like heads and limbs and genitals. I was like, wait, what? Did he say genitals?
Yeah, he's that type of guy.
What is he
just says completely random things that should not be said. Margot Robbie is, of course, returning as Harley Quinn in her most comics accurate look to date. Like, I was pretty unhappy with the direction they went in the Birds of Prey film. And I'm so glad to see James Gunn bringing such a faithful interpretation of the Harley Quinn character. Her costume was pulled like straight out of the Arkham video game series.
Really? That's awesome.
And James Gunn had a ton of great stuff to say about the character. It was his most favorite character to write for the film. So you know she's going to play a pretty big role.
It's nice that James Gunn is a fan, as opposed to someone like Kathy Yan, who maybe wasn't as big of a fan of the character and therefore didn't feel the need to be as true to the character's look within the Birds of Prey film.
Yeah, that always helps. And that's one thing I've always admired about Marvel is how big of a fan Kevin Feige is of the characters and how, since he's in charge, he's going to make sure those characters stay true to the source material. James Gunn was talking about how he read the first Suicide Squad comic run written by John Ostrander as it was released.
Oh, nice.
Now, characters like Polka Dot Man haven't been a member of the Suicide Squad, and James Gunn acknowledged that. You know, he mentioned that some of these characters are just DC villain characters that he wanted to put into his movie because he's always wanted to use them. And it seems like Polka Dot Man will also play a substantial role. James Gunn was saying that of all the Suicide Squad members, he related to him the most. Daniela Melchior will be playing a gender-bent version of Ratcatcher.
Yeah, she's called Ratcatcher 2 here. So I'm guessing that she's the original Ratcatcher's protege or something.
Yeah, which is just like a great bit of world building, even in this like roll call trailer. There has been a Ratcatcher before her.
Do you think she'll be able to control Sean Gunn's character?
Oh, Weasel? Oh, that's interesting. I didn't even think about that. Maybe. That could be pretty cool. Idris Elba, now when he was first cast, he was going to be replacing Will Smith as Deadshot. And when they announced that he was going to be playing a different character after all, I thought it was going to be Bronze Tiger, because I thought he would just be perfect for that character. Once we saw the suit, it kind of became evident that he wasn't going to play that, so I thought he was going to play Vigilante, as did many other people on the internet, but it looks like he will be playing Bloodsport, who's a villain that I'm actually not too familiar with. He famously shot Superman with a kryptonite bullet. That's sort of what he's known for. I'm sure
really?
That'll be like his, street cred in the movie, like, oh, you're the guy who shot Superman. Dang.
I do like his mask that they gave him for this movie.
Yeah, that thing's crazy looking. Almost looks like a xenomorph.
Yeah. Now, what's the deal with King Shark? King Shark is in the movie, but it looks like they're just going to cast the voice for him later.
And I think it's pretty well known that he's going to be played by Steve Agee. I think Steve Agee probably just wants the role to go uncredited.
Oh, interesting. I wonder why.
I don't know, just probably to make audiences feel like they're actually looking at a real-life shark. He looks really cool. He looks kind of cute, kind of funny.
Yeah, if King Shark dies in the course of this film, I have a feeling a lot of fans are going to riot. He just looks too friendly.
Yeah. If it's anything close to what they're doing in the Harley Quinn show with him, I can't see them killing this character off. He's just too subversive of what people expect, a great white shark to act like. Mei Ling Ng is playing Mong Gal. I think we all kind of guessed that from the behind-the-scenes set photos. She looks great as the character.
Really? Because this is like my least favorite. It looks very sci-fi channel.
I don't know what you're talking about. The costume looks very well done. Peter Capaldi is playing the Thinker, and he has a really cool look. He's a Flash villain in the comic. Like, he thinks faster than the Flash moves.
Oh, fascinating.
Yeah, the look is pretty cool. And it's great to see, a former Doctor Who in another kind of, like, geeky role. Alice Braga is playing a character called Solsaria. I'm not exactly sure if she's a member of the squad or not, but, she's a character in the movie.
She looks almost identical to the character that she played in Predators.
Yeah, she does. Maybe that's why she was cast. Pete Davidson is Blackguard, and I can't wait to see him. I'm guessing he's going to get killed off right away.
It would be funny if he's the only one that survives, honestly. I think that'd be hilarious. The one that everybody wants to see die ends up being the only one that makes it out alive.
I don't know if that'll happen, but I do enjoy Pete Davidson's work. He's a really funny guy, so I'm really glad that he's in this film. Same with Nathan Fillion. He's playing a character called TDK, which apparently stands for the Detachable Kid, but that's not confirmed yet.
Was he based off of Arm Fall Off Boy, who is part of the Legion of Superheroes?
That's the rumor. Yeah, the Detachable Kid is actually an original creation of James Gunn, so there's no way he's surviving this movie. Nathan Fillion is pretty good friends with James Gunn, so I wouldn't be surprised if James Gunn tried to come up with like the most hilarious way for a character to die for this character. Of course, James Gunn's brother Sean Gunn, who did the mocap for Rocket Raccoon in the Guardians of the Galaxy films, is playing Weasel, who looks like a giant, really scary looking weasel.
I think he looks hilarious. The stupid look on his face in the promo shot.
And the way he licks the glass in like the behind the scenes trailer.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. Jai Courtney, of course, is returning as Captain Boomerang. And I thought he was great in the first movie in that role. So I'm really happy again to see him returning.
And to actually be throwing boomerangs in battle
right?
in the course of this film.
Right? Actually do something. Last but not least, John Cena is playing Peacemaker, who he described in the behind-the-scenes trailer as a douchey Captain America.
Yeah, it's a great cast and a great set of characters. I really like how in the behind-the-scenes featurette, they were talking about how it's a 70s war film combined with James Gunn's sensibilities.
Yeah, the behind-the-scenes trailer kind of felt a little bit like a PR move. Like, there's a lot of people who really didn't like the first Suicide Squad film. And I think this trailer is for them. You know, it starts off with Joel Kinnaman, who was in the first movie, saying, like, this is going to be like nothing you've ever seen before, especially our last movie.
And there was Margot Robbie who was commenting that they needed a director to set the bar, which was a huge dig at David Ayer.
Oh, I know. And David Dismalchin is like, there's no one else who could direct a Suicide Squad movie but James Gunn. I was like, oh, damn, how does David Ayer feel about that?
Shots fired.
I am kind of disappointed that we didn't get like an actual trailer for the film. I mean, it's nice to see what's going on behind the scenes. It's nice to see who everyone is playing. But of all the films at DC FanDome, you know, besides Wonder Woman, they had the most footage shot. The film comes out in a little less than a year, so we'll see how many trailers we actually get for this. But I can't wait for the first legit one to come out. Hopefully when Wonder Woman is released. Maybe we'll get it then. Moving on to Flash news, one of the biggest themes of the DC FanDome event was this focus on the concept of the multiverse. You know, the panel that Jim Lee, Greg Berlanti, and Walter Hamada had? That was all about how everything you see from the comics, from the TV show to the movies, because they're each in charge of all three, are continuity. They just take place in different multiverses. They stressed that superly heavy in that panel. And that kind of came up again in the panel for The Flash with director Andy Muschietti, writer Christina Hodson, and actor Ezra Miller.
It's a great way to rationalize like all of the different actors that you've seen in these roles over the years.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And it kind of allows everyone to do anything they want. Like, it's a way to allow for ultimate creative freedom. You know, Walter Hamada was saying that for a while, he was preventing Greg Berlanti from using certain characters in the TV shows because they were having plans for them in upcoming movies. And he mentioned how he kind of came to the realization that that was kind of silly because some of these movies never plan out and there was no reason to make Greg Berlanti wait years to use a character that Walter Hamada's division may never end up using anyway. Apparently, like, their go-between was all done between Jim Lee, and together they all kind of decided, hey, DC has a multiverse, so let's take advantage of that. Let's allow Matt Reeves to tell his own Batman story, you know, while we do a Suicide Squad film, while we do a Flash film, while there's a Flash TV show, that whole kind of thing. Mm-hmm. It was actually really, really interesting. We learned earlier on this week, before the FanDome event, that Ben Affleck will be returning as Batman, which I was so happy about. Like, he's my favorite actor for Batman, and I just couldn't believe that he would be returning to the role alongside other Batman actors like Michael Keaton.
Well, Ben Affleck has certainly been the most comic book accurate version of the character, so it'll be nice to basically say goodbye to him in the role with this one additional film, since he kind of dropped out of his own Batman film and Matt Reeves' film kind of unceremoniously.
Yeah, Andy Muschietti was saying that, you know, before he was even involved in the film, the filmmakers working on The Flash reached out to Ben Affleck to ask if he was interested in being in the film. And Ben Affleck, you know, he read the script, he wrote notes and said, you know, if you guys make these changes, I'll be in the film. Well, when Andy Muschietti came on board, he made sure to make those changes. So once Ben Affleck saw that they were being made, he agreed to be in it. So I think absolutely that this will be a send-off for the character of Ben Affleck's Batman. Walter Hamada mentioned in that DC Multiverse panel with Jim Lee and Greg Berlanti that this film, the Flash film, will sort of be the catalyst for why there's so much different DC content on screen, on television, in different movies. It's all going to be explained in this one movie, which is pretty exciting. Like, this may be the most important DC on-screen story that will ever be produced, because it's going to touch on everything DC's done in the past and will do in the future. Now, of course, they're still working on the film. I don't think they've even started filming yet, so we didn't see any footage or anything, but we did get concept art of Barry Allen's new suit, which they're saying was built for him by Ben Affleck's Batman.
Oh, interesting. It's very different from his suit that Barry Allen created in the Justice League movie.
Yeah, it's much more streamlined. It has like these gold seams just like running throughout the suit. We don't get the yellow boots. I still don't understand why all the Flash costume designers are afraid of the yellow boots. We still haven't even seen that in the TV show. but it does look slightly more comic accurate than what we got in Justice League.
I mean, I don't know. I was actually a big fan of the suit, the way it was adapted for the Justice League movie. This concept art suit is a lot more streamlined and comic book accurate, but it also kind of reminds me a little bit of the CGI Green Lantern suit that was in that movie.
Oh, that's true. I didn't even think about that.
The way it has, like, the energy lines running through it.
Yeah, that's a fair criticism.
I mean, it's not really a criticism because I did actually like the CGI Green Lantern suit. I thought it was a nice adaptation and interpretation of what that would look like. But I'm not entirely sure it works as well for the Flash. I'd have to see more of it. It's strange because as a piece of concept art, it doesn't really do its job in that the character of the Flash is largely hidden in shadow and is a silhouette in either of the pieces. So it doesn't really give a good description or feel of what the costume actually looks like. Which makes me feel like the end result will end up turning out quite different from what this art imposes it'll be.
I think the suit is slightly different from the Green Lantern suit in that the light seams don't really follow his musculature. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit more free-flowing than that. And the concept art that we got may be a little bit dark. I think in one of them because, he's surrounded by the Speed Force light, I think. And the other, he's like in some subterranean environment alongside Batman. I know they're still in pre-production, so yeah, the suit may be very different by the time it's actually produced. But we'll see. I'm not hating this so far. And I'm really liking, all the filmmakers' energy for the film. It was actually a pretty funny panel. Ezra Miller is kind of a funny guy.
What did you think of the fact that it was Michael Keaton's Batman in that concept art?
I think it's pretty cool. In the concept art, the guy hasn't aged a day.
Yeah, I thought this was going to be like an older version of Bruce Wayne. It seems like it's Bruce Wayne as he was portrayed in the Batman Returns film. So they're probably going to have to use de-aging technology on Michael Keaton or something like that.
Well, I think what the beauty of the Flash as a character is that he could time travel. And they mentioned that several times in the panel. So you could get Michael Keaton, in his Batman Returns prime, and you could get Michael Keaton as Bruce Wayne when he's older. You could do both. Ultimately, this panel has made me really excited for the Flash movie in a way that I really hadn't been before, just because of what I was hearing from everyone about the multiverse and how important this film will be to that concept. The film doesn't come out until summer of 2022, so we're still a long ways away from probably seeing anything from this film, but it's definitely one to keep your eye on. Of all the panels that DC FanDome put together, I think my favorite one was The Rock's Black Adam panel. It didn't take place in the Hall of Justice. It took place in The Rock's own kind of ancient temple-looking structure. And he wasn't just a talking face in a little miniature screen or anything like that. It was a really well-produced, well-put-together panel, with The Rock just explaining how he's been waiting forever to get this project off the ground and how passionate he is about everything. And they showed a ton of concept art for it. And it was all done by Boss Logic, who's a pretty famous fan art creator, but now I guess is doing concept art for film professionally. He was just that good. So the concept art trailer, has narration by The Rock, and he's kind of explaining how Kahndaq was this melting pot of people and wealth and magic. But his character of Teth Adam was a slave who became empowered with the power of Shazam, the wizard. And the concept art of The Rock as Black Adam is just so badass. There's so much emotion behind it. It's just really well done. One of the more interesting things about this concept art teaser is that we see the Heart of Darkness, which is a small purple gemstone. They never talk about it, but it's there. And of course, if you're a fan of DC Comics, you recognize that instantly as the gemstone that houses Eclipso, the original spirit of vengeance.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Eclipso is revealed as the driving force behind Black Adam's turn to the dark side, as it were. Just this corrupting influence on the character.
I thought it was cool how the wizard Shazam in this concept art is the same one that we saw in the movie Shazam, which makes me think that this is taking place in the same continuity as the Zachary Levi film.
Oh, it should. I think it absolutely will take place in the same continuity. It better. You can't have a Shazam film and a Black Adam film exist in separate continuities. That would be freaking horrible. But it looks like that's not going to be the case, so that's great. Now, the movie apparently takes place over the course of 5,000 years, or at least it starts 5,000 years in the past and then jumps forward to the present time when Black Adam is reawakened. And he announced who he's going to battle against on the JSA. It's going to be Hawkman, Dr. Fate, Cyclone, and Atom Smasher, We, of course, already know that Atom Smasher is being played by Noah Centineo, but the concept art for each of them looks amazing. They look so comics accurate. I can't wait to see them on the big screen.
Yeah, it was cool that several of the characters also have ties to ancient Egypt, or maybe Kahndaq, as it were, including Dr. Fate, including Hawkman. It'll be cool to see how those relationships evolve over the course of the 5,000-year gap.
Yeah, I was really hoping for some casting announcements. We didn't get any of that, but it is nice to have the JSA characters confirmed.
What did you think of Black Adam's costume?
It's perfect. It is absolute perfection. I like it a lot more than Zachary Levi's costume. If they could actually pull off what they have here in the concept art in live action, it'll just be amazing. I'm looking forward to seeing his costume. I'm looking forward to seeing Hawkman's costume and Dr. Fate's costume, those three specifically. But also, it's rumored that the characters of Isis and Osiris are also going to be in this film. In the same way that Shazam has his, Shazam family, Isis and Osiris are part of Black Adam's family, too. So I'm looking forward to seeing those characters as well.
What do you think of the title treatment for Black Adam?
I mean, it's kind of generic. It's fine. It's just like sans serif letters with a lightning bolt in the A. I do wonder how people will react to the title Black Adam, considering the current climate right now. But this film isn't coming out until next year, so we'll see how that turns out.
Well, he's called Black Adam because his heart is black.
Right, but how many people know that? Again, this was one of my favorite panels just because of how they did it and because of The Rock's enthusiasm for the project. And I can't wait to see how this film ties into the Shazam sequel, which has been announced will be titled Shazam: Fury of the Gods.
Oh, that totally sounds like he's going up against Black Adam.
It does, yeah. We'll see. Now, there were 2 video games that were revealed during the DC FanDome. One of them was teased ahead of time, so we already knew about that one. It was Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. But the other one, we all kind of suspected was going to be a Gotham Knights game based off of some domains that Warner Brothers purchased. But we didn't know exactly what that was going to mean. But it looks like Warner Brothers Games Montreal, who developed one of the Arkham games, Arkham Origins, which was fantastic, is making the sequel to Arkham Knight called Gotham Knights, where you get to play as Nightwing, Robin, Batgirl, and Red Hood. And the gameplay just looks amazing.
Yeah, the story behind the game is that Bruce Wayne dies, and he has a contingency in place to set up the Bat family with special gear that helps them continue the fight on crime. Specifically, Barbara Gordon as Batgirl, Dick Grayson Nightwing, Jason Todd as Red Hood, and I'm not sure which of the Robins it is.
In Arkham City, you got to play as Tim Drake, but I'm guessing that this is going to be Damian Wayne. I could be wrong. If you played Arkham Knight, you know that there were several endings to the video game. Some of them had Bruce Wayne live, some of them had him die. It looks like this one stems from one of the endings where he actually does die. And the whole trailer starts off with those 4 characters sort of receiving the last will and testament of Bruce Wayne for them to take up the war on crime in Gotham City. Now, in the Arkham Knight game, you got to fight alongside Nightwing. You got to play as him for a little bit as well. There was also some DLC that allowed you to play as Barbara Gordon, Batgirl. And of course, we got to play as Robin in some of the other video games. So playing as them really isn't anything new, but the fact that you get to play as all 4 and switch between all 4 is amazing. They all get to ride around on motorcycles through Gotham. They all have their own style of gameplay.
Yeah, I really like that they incorporated Red Hood into this because I don't think he gets enough love among the general public as a member of the Bat family. I think it's so cool that they found a way to incorporate Jason Todd back into the canon and how he's a cool badass that shoots guns and is so unlike any other member of the Bat family and just so badass.
Well, he played a big part of Arkham Knight, that game. Well, he, in fact, was the Arkham Knight, the titular character.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it is kind of cool to see him sort of evolve into Red Hood in this game. At the end of the world premiere trailer, they revealed that the main villains of the game will be the Court of Owls, which I'm sure is going to make a ton of people excited. That also kind of sets up a way for Batman to come back, I think, because the Court of Owls do deal with clones and resurrection. So I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of the game, you get to play as Batman once again. The other game that was announced, again, was Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. But I really didn't think that reveal was as successful as what they did with Gotham Knights. We didn't get to see any gameplay footage at all. We only got a hint of what the story might be, which is a shame because it's Rocksteady Studios, the guys who made the first and best Arkham games. So I was really looking forward to seeing what they had. And I'm still excited for the game. The way they described it kind of seems like it'll almost be like Fortnite, except, a story mode version of that. They're saying it's essentially like a third-person shoot-'em-up game. And each of the 4 characters that you get to play as in the Suicide Squad are Harley Quinn, Deadshot, King Shark, and Captain Boomerang. Each of them has guns. Each of them has their own method of like moving around the environment. It looks like Harley Quinn like does a lot of grapples. Almost looks like she swings around like Spider-Man. King Shark can leap really far. Deadshot has a jetpack that he could also use to like burn enemies. And Captain Boomerang, it looks like in this game, is a speedster.
Yeah, that was weird. I didn't know what to think about that. I was like, is Captain Boomerang a speedster? Has he always been a speedster? Like, what's going on? Who am I?
There's a version in the comics of Captain Boomerang. It's actually the original Captain Boomerang's son who has super speed. But I don't think that's this version. I'm kind of surprised they went that route with the character. But yeah, it sounds like all 4 members of the squad will be around you at all times, and you get to switch between each one. It might be interesting. It probably will be. It'll probably be fantastic. The setting for the game will actually be Metropolis.
Yeah, and it's taken over by Brainiac, it looks like.
Yeah, and Brainiac has taken over the minds of the Justice League. So it'll be kind of interesting to see how these 4 members of the Suicide Squad have any hope of taking out the Justice League. But we'll see what happens. I really like Rocksteady's designs for all of the characters that they put in their games, from Harley Quinn to Batman to Joker to Mr. Freeze. I'm really looking forward to seeing all the other designs they have for the members of the Justice League. Now we know which consoles the Suicide Squad game is coming out for. It's going to be for PC, PS5, and the Xbox Series X, which makes me really sad because I have a Switch and I love it. But of course, none of the DC games ever comes out for it.
It's just not a powerful enough console, really. That being said, I do like the games more.
I'm really hoping the Gotham Knights game comes out for the Switch. We'll see.
Yeah, and we'll see for all of this DC content because, it's all pretty much a big question mark in terms of quality.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, like all the stuff that they announced during the DC FanDome, it's like, will it be good?
Oh, it'll be great. All this content is going to blow Marvel content out of the water. Like, there's no question. Did you see the Batman trailer?
I mean, I think there would be no question if it was a Marvel digital event.
Marvel doesn't have one.
Well, that brings us to our question of the week. If Marvel had an exclusive digital convention like the DC FanDome, what would it be called and what would it be like?
Post your answer to our Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or email us at dynamicduelpodcast@gmail.com. We'll pick our favorite answer and draw that person a Dynamic Duel No Prize that we'll post to social media. Now, of course, the DC FanDome is not done. The Hall of Justice event has passed, but coming September 12th, we'll get access to the multiverse of islands that we were supposed to get the day of the FanDome, but for some reason we didn't. That was actually a really big surprise. Like 3 days before the event, they announced that the schedule that everyone had made was now moot because all of the other events outside of the Hall of Justice were going to be pushed to September 12th. But we have a lot to look forward to, and we'll have more DC news to report on as the FanDome continues.
But that does it for all the news for this episode, guys, so let's go ahead and get into the main event where we review the DC animated film Deathstroke, Knights and Dragons.
Okay, so Deathstroke, Knights and Dragons is an animated feature directed by Soon-Jin Ahn that's a collection of animated shorts from the CW seed in the same way that Constantine City of Demons was an animated miniseries that they collected and combined into one film. Fair warning, straight off the bat, this is a spoiler review, so if you haven't seen the film and you don't want it spoiled for you, just wait to see it, then come back and listen to the rest of this episode.
Yeah, the movie's only about 87 minutes long, but it does feel like a full story. I did enjoy this movie quite a bit.
Yeah, it's Deathstroke's first animated film. The character is insanely cool, and this movie just reinforced that. Now, it's no secret that Warner Media uses its animated films to gauge interest in their properties, like the success of the Green Lantern First Flight. That animated film helped greenlight the Green Lantern live-action film starring Ryan Reynolds, and Batman Assault on Arkham helped greenlight David Ayer's Suicide Squad film. Fans have been clamoring to see Deathstroke on the silver screen even before he popped up in the ending minutes of Justice League. But if this was Warner Media's attempt at creating a trial run of a Deathstroke franchise, it wasn't a bad one. I think they could do better. I certainly don't think they could have done it cheaper.
No, the animation is fairly cheap, but I do think that they compensated that by making it so stylish. I think this is one of the more stylish DC animated films that I've ever seen.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like the frame rate wasn't smooth. The backgrounds were minimal. And if something didn't need to move in a frame, it didn't. Sort of like anime. It reminded me of a mix between like Eon Flux and something from Bruce Timm. Just like angular shapes and flat coloring. It was simple, but the action was legit amazing.
The action was incredible, and it almost makes you wonder what the director of this film could have done with more impressive animation.
Right? I was wondering the same thing as I was watching it. I was like, holy shit, this is incredible. It was so quick and stylized, and Deathstroke is such a badass here, just dropping henchmen without looking before you even see him lift the gun. Like in our Deathstroke versus Deadpool episode, we described Deathstroke as having the mind of and being as haunting as Batman, having the physicality of Captain America, and the ferocity and healing of Wolverine. And the filmmakers totally sold me on that in this film.
I mean, he definitely doesn't have the personality of anybody good. The character is a little bit one note in this movie. But yeah, in terms of just badassery and taking it to the enemies, Deathstroke is just a Terminator.
Literally.
Right.
Now, the story of the film was pretty basic, but that's not always a bad thing. And it's understandable since this film, again, was compiled together from a series of 12 animated shorts that, again, first appeared on the CW Seed. I didn't watch the original web series, but I could kind of tell watching this where each short began and ended. The film was very simplistic, in a way that something like Constantine City of Demons, which was also a CW Seed web series, wasn't. In a way, this film was a lot like a trade paperback collection of a 12-issue comic series, and watching this film kind of felt like watching a motion comic.
Yeah, it was very episodic, and the story itself was actually fairly cliched, because it's essentially just the story of a family man with a secret dangerous lifestyle, and his family ends up getting caught up in it, and he ends up having to atone for that, and rescue his family, which is kind of a story that we've seen quite a few times before.
Yeah, like in True Lies,
Mr. and Mrs. Smith, a whole bunch of them. But the thing is, within the superhero genre, you can tell these cliched stories and still kind of get away with the movie being more interesting. I mean, look at characters like the Punisher, which is your typical revenge story. The guy's family gets killed, so he sets out on a mission of vengeance. That's another story that's been told time and time again, but because the Punisher is within the superhero world, it's automatically more interesting. And that's kind of what's special about the genre, or maybe it just speaks to my preferences as a fan. Like, if you were to show me a heist movie, I'd be like, okay. But then if you're like, oh, let me show you a superhero heist movie, I'm going to be like, oh, sold. Absolutely.
Yeah, like Ant-Man or something?
Yeah, like Ant-Man. Or it's like, oh, let's watch this romantic comedy. I'd be like, meh. But if you were like, let me show you this superhero romantic comedy, I'm automatically sold. Which is really not fair. But it is what it is, There's something timeless and automatically more interesting about these characters than any other characters out there.
Or I think with comic book characters, like the stakes could be higher, the action can be more intense. Everything is just slightly bigger and you're right, more interesting, I guess. Now, this series was written by J.M. DeMatteis, a fairly prolific comic book writer, and a good one. He also wrote Constantine City of Demons, which I loved. We both loved. And he's won an Eisner Award for DC Comics. His involvement not only lended this comic book cred to this film, but his talent also crafted a streamlined yet weighty morality tale of consequences and relationships, which really are the themes of this film. Let's touch on the themes in our character breakdown, starting with Slade Wilson, aka Deathstroke. Now, Slade was voiced by Michael Chiklis, who you may know as the Thing from the Fantastic Four films. He has a pretty gruff voice, which I thought lended itself fairly decently to Deathstroke. It wasn't as menacing, I thought, as it should have been at times, but it brought a humanity to Slade that the story needed because he's painted very unsympathetically in the film.
I had a hard time believing, honestly, that it was Michael Chiklis doing the voice work, because although I knew it was him, he was able to disguise his voice in a way that didn't make it immediately recognizable. Like, I listened for hints of the Thing from the Fantastic Four movies within this film, and I never got it. It was almost like Bradley Cooper's portrayal of Rocket Raccoon, where it's like, okay, yeah, I could kind of see that maybe that's Bradley Cooper's voice, but only if I really think about it, I think Michael Chiklis did an amazing job in this role.
Yeah, he's a really talented voice actor. I agree. I thought he did amazing. Now, as far as the character of Deathstroke, thanks to his heightened abilities, he's very talented at what he does, and he knows it. In this film, that sense of superiority goes to his head. He becomes selfish and he keeps secrets because he feels like he's above the consequences. He sees himself as a shining knight, like a character from a story he read to his son Joseph as a child. But as the film progresses, he realizes that he wasn't a knight, but a dragon, a source of sorrow and pain for his family.
And that was a pretty cool Easter egg in that the Shining Knight is actually a DC comic book character.
Yeah, I recognized that. I was like, oh, cool, it's the Shining Knight. The Shining Knight was actually a character in the Stargirl television series. So my wife recognized that as well.
Oh, cool.
It's kind of interesting to see such an obscure character as the Shining Knight kind of, get recognized. Now, because Slade had an affair on his wife, he ended up with an illegitimate daughter, Rose, that grew up hating him, and a wife, Adeline, that no longer trusted him. And because Slade kept his mercenary life a secret from his wife, he was caught off guard when his enemies came to kidnap their son, Joseph. Because Slade never tried to see Joseph after he and Adeline split, Joseph felt abandoned and was easily manipulated by Rose. And because he unknowingly killed the Jackal's daughter, the Jackal became obsessed with punishing Deathstroke for his sins and destroying his life. And it was that specific act that really hit home for me. The Jackal called Deathstroke out on the fact that they were both murderers, that they were both the same. And Deathstroke was like, no, you're a terrorist. I only murder if the cause is right. He's off liberating countries from tyrants and dictators. And Jackal is like, but that doesn't matter. We both leave innocent widows and children in our wake. All of those bloody, violent deaths that we see Deathstroke perform, those are all humans with families that he's just callously slicing and shooting to ribbons. One of those random, unnamed people Deathstroke killed happened to be Jackal's daughter, something Deathstroke never even considered because, again, he never thought about consequences and never realized with every death he causes, he's leaving ghosts in his wake. Well, a lot of those ghosts come back to haunt him in this film.
Well, I mean, Jackal's as much to blame. Why the hell is he sending his daughter out to go up against Deathstroke?
It kind of seemed like he was training his daughters to rise up through the hive ranks in the same way he trained Rose.
Jackal was just an idiot. He knew that he was sending his daughter to death.
I don't know.
He's as much to blame for her death as Deathstroke is.
I don't know. I think he was pretty devastated by her death. I don't think he knew he was sending her to die. I think he probably figured that the combination of her and Bronze Tiger were more than a match for Deathstroke, to subdue him. We've mentioned the literary concept of a character's ghost on this podcast before. This film is rife with perfect examples of ghosts, which are these, past consequences that haunt and motivate the hero. There's a scene in the film after Slade finds out Hive has kidnapped his son from a boarding school that Slade meets his ex-wife Adeline for the first time in 10 years. They're both angry at each other over the decisions they've made, and Slade is just like, stop, the past is dead. And Adeline is like, no, the past is not dead. It's alive, and it's happening all over again. And I think that's the thesis statement of this film. Those that don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Slade didn't learn his lesson from the first time his son was kidnapped. He still chose being Deathstroke over his family. He was still living this secret life, and secrets are absolute poison to relationships. In the end, when every truth is exposed and everything is laid bare, Slade doesn't give up being Deathstroke, but he does sacrifice himself for his sins and the sins of his family in an ultimate selfless act that also destroys both of the dragons tormenting his family, himself and Jackal.
Yeah, he was quite the unsympathetic character in this movie, which I understood because Deathstroke is not a good guy within the DC Comics universe. If anything, he's a straight-up villain, especially when it comes to the Teen Titans.
Yeah.
So I never really expected to sympathize with him or empathize with him in any way. That being said, I think the film did a fairly successful job at getting me to care about this ruthless, liar, asshole of a character as best as you possibly could, honestly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, I think that has a lot to do with Michael Chiklis's performance.
I really felt for his family, especially Joseph, especially Adeline, who was just betrayed and hurt by Deathstroke so many times within the course of this film.
Yeah, Adeline was voiced by Sasha Alexander, who's a television actress. She did okay in the role. There were times when it really felt like the actors weren't recording their lines together, like in the same recording studio, because the reactive tones in their dialogue didn't seem appropriate all the time. And I noticed that most often with Adeline's lines.
I don't like the character design for Adeline, but I did think it was cool how they made her a member of Team 7, which I've heard you mention several times during our Duel episodes.
Right, yeah. In the comics, she was the one who trained Slade, and they did get married and have a son. Now, I also sympathized with the character of Adeline, but she wasn't faultless. Like, she made mistakes just like Slade, but the difference was that she learned from her mistakes. You know, when she left the military, she got soft and was caught off guard by Jackal and was beaten pretty badly. But she trained and she became stronger so that something like that couldn't happen to her again. And through that training, she was able to hold her own for a bit against the likes of Lady Shiva.
Which is very impressive.
Yeah.
But I don't even know if her going soft could be considered a mistake because she had no reason to suspect that her husband was still in the vigilante game and creating all these enemies.
And it was constantly putting her life at risk without her knowing.
Yeah.
And that's fair. But there were other instances of where she learned, you know, from her past mistakes. When she got Joseph back at the end of the film, she didn't send him away again. And she didn't send Rose away, even though Rose put her son at risk in a similar way that she felt Slade put Joseph at risk when she sent him away. It was Adeline and her constant asking of why that made Slade realize how he wasn't a knight, that he didn't need to be a knight, that he had a greater responsibility to be a strong, good husband and father, and that he was delusional and psychologically broken to choose to be Deathstroke. And Deathstroke is psychologically broken, but in the comics, it's a result of the government experiment he was in. It just like fractured his psyche. It made him slightly psychotic. They didn't touch on that in this film.
I mean, I think it was fairly apparent. Only someone who is as broken as he is would do the things that he did.
Like choose to be a murderer over a family man and keep lying?
Yeah, and to continue his string of lies even after the fact that he's obviously been caught, his wife has obviously been beaten, and his son is obviously gone. He doesn't portray a lot of outward emotion in regards to that fact, but you still recognize that there's a lot going on internally. But, you know, the fact that it was all hidden corroborated the idea that he is a psychological mess.
And they explicitly mentioned how much he kept from his wife. Like, she didn't even know that he had a healing factor as a result of the experiment. He kept that from her, like, from the very beginning. Another thing I noticed that they didn't show in this film was exactly how Slade lost his eye. If you remember from our Deathstroke versus Deadpool duel episode in the comics, I mentioned that when Slade brought his son back from the Jackal with a slit throat, Adeline shot him point blank in the face, which is why he only has one eye.
Oh, I would have loved to have seen that.
Yeah.
He totally deserved that at that point.
I'm guessing DeMatteis wanted Adeline to be a more sympathetic figure in this film, and I doubt Deathstroke would have wanted to team up with her if she had done something like that to him in the movie.
I couldn't believe it. I mean, I knew it was coming, but I just really couldn't believe it when you see the little kid with his throat cut. It was heartbreaking, man.
Super heartbreaking. Hearing Joseph like gasping and trying to say dad. Ugh, right in the feels.
Yes, ugh. I'm glad at least he was able to be saved and that he did have powers that allowed him to continue to communicate. Still, it's fucked up. Any normal person would have surrendered, you know?
Yeah, I mean, in the comics, it was even worse. Like, he didn't want to give up the name of his client to Jackal. It's not like Jackal was trying to get him to join Hive or anything like that. It was even more of a pride issue, I think, in the comics.
Oh, God.
Now, speaking of the Jackal, Jackal was voiced by Chris Jai.
Yeah, that was the guy who played Thanos in the original Avengers movie at the end stinger for that. And he played a bit part as a goon in Captain America Civil War.
What, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I think he did a pretty good job as Jackal.
But yeah, he did a great job, I thought. Now, Jackal respected Slade's decision to not want to be a part of Hive, but he had superiors within the organization to answer to, so he kidnapped Joseph. When Slade killed Jackal's daughter and seemingly Jackal himself, Jackal used Slade to kill his superiors and the rest of Hive so that Jackal could rebuild it as its new head, which was pretty sly and sinister. Everything Jackal did was sly and sinister, like raising Slade's illegitimate daughter, training and turning her against him, using her to manipulate Joseph and develop his psychic powers so that he could take control of the world leaders. It was all kind of brilliant, and the fact that it would bring Slade pain was just the cherry on top. The Jackal is not like a big villain in the comics, he's pretty generic. But I thought this film did a really, really good job and successful job adapting him from the comics. Touching real quick on Joseph/Jericho and Rose, both of Deathstroke's kids resented him for abandoning them. And it was an interesting twist that they were manipulating Jackal. It was a huge oversight on Jackal's behalf, like kind of a huge plot hole, that he didn't think Joseph would tell Rose what Jackal did to him.
Yeah, you'd think that Rose would be really pissed off learning that. Obviously, Joseph would remember that. Ultimately, he did set up defenses to use against Joseph.
Oh, I guess he explicitly did say he did plan for that. So maybe not as big of an oversight as I thought.
But I mean, ultimately, that means his plan to psychically take over the world leaders was never going to come true anyway.
That's true.
So why go through all that trouble if he knew that it wasn't going to work out? I don't know.
Just in case it did work out? I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, maybe he won't remember that, I freaking slit his throat open.
Jeez. Who's going to forget that? Now, I'm not sure what Joseph and Rose's ultimate plan was once they overthrew Jackal, or why they waited until that moment to betray him. But, hey, they're teenagers. So, no offense to our teenage listeners. But, most of you lack the foresight to even realize that the hairstyle in your high school yearbook photo is going to look real dumb in 10 years.
All you teenage listeners, you're not dumb, but just know that you're going to get smarter.
For sure. It'll happen.
Now, I wonder why the kids manifested such different powers, despite both being offspring of Deathstroke. It seems like Rose got Deathstroke's powers to a T, with the advanced mind and body, whereas Jericho got an entirely different power set.
I'm not sure why. It was just that way in the comics. I don't think Rose was introduced until after Jericho, and I think they probably just wanted to make her more like Deathstroke. All right, so moving on to the plot breakdown, the opening scene of the film shows a bloody, injured Deathstroke wash up on the shore of a beach. The whole time I was watching the film, I was just waiting to see the film come full circle to that scene. I thought it would have been right before the third act, but once I realized it was going to tie into the end of the film, I thought it was kind of spoilery to show how his body survived his sacrificial explosion. I mean, of course, the title character isn't going to actually die in the film, but it did kind of ruin the ending for me, and I wish they would have just started the film with the next scene. In the next scene, we flash back to the beginning of the film, I guess, where Slade is speaking to Adeline on the phone from a hotel room abroad. It's established that Slade's always away from home, and that Adeline distrusts him because of the affair he had while they were engaged. Joseph asked his dad to read him a book called Knights and Dragons about a knight who saves a land from the dragons terrorizing it. Slade then proceeds to lay waste to a general's stronghold, killing dozens of soldiers within. And I'm not sure why, considering he only wanted to let the general know that he killed the nation's president. He could have just snuck into the general's office and intimidated him there.
I think he really wanted to intimidate him. He wanted him to know, if you're not a good leader, I will fucking kill everybody again.
It's kind of a really twisted message to deliver. You'd think a decapitated head would be message enough, but no. He has to kill, all of his soldiers.
Yeah.
While that was going on, Jackal breaks into the Wilson house and beats Adeline while he reveals that Slade is the mercenary Deathstroke before he kidnaps Joseph. As Slade recovers from his night in his hotel room, we get a flashback to Slade's origin of being a soldier whom the government experimented on, which reminded me a lot of Deadpool.
Well, we all know that Deathstroke is a ripoff of Deadpool, so yeah, makes sense.
You have that backwards. What did you just say?
We all know that Deathstroke is a ripoff of Deadpool, so
that's not right. Shut up. Now, Slade returns home to find his wife beaten and his son missing. He tracks down Jackal, who seeks Bronze Tiger and his daughter, unbeknownst to us, on Deathstroke when he refuses to join the Hive terrorist organization. Slade kills the woman and cuts off Bronze Tiger's arm before running his sword through Jackal and getting to Joseph too late. A Hive minion slits Joseph's throat just before Slade could reach him. Slade blows up the building they're in as he rushes Joseph to a hospital, but Bronze Tiger manages to get away with the body of Jackal.
What did you think of Bronze Tiger's portrayal in this as a straight-up villain? I was kind of assuming that maybe this was just brainwashed Bronze Tiger, where he was being manipulated by the League of Assassins, but this movie really never alluded to that.
Yeah, I mean, considering our last episode, we went over Bronze Tiger's history, the character is really cool, really, really formidable, so it was kind of frustrating to see him treated the way he was in this film. He was just a guy that Deathstroke kept cutting the arm off of and blowing up. And it's that's not cool for the character of Bronze Tiger. He's way cooler than that.
That being said, I do think that his fight against Deathstroke at that base where the fires were happening, I thought that was the coolest fight of the entire film. It was just really well shot, really well directed and choreographed.
Yeah, the choreography was great. I do think that he put up like the strongest fight for Deathstroke in that scene, which is good. At Adeline's request, Slade leaves his family, writing a note for Joseph explaining that he was secretly a knight, like the one from the children's book they read together, and that he had to leave so that the dragons he slayed wouldn't come for Joseph or his mom. Flash forward 10 years later, and Slade learns that even after seemingly hunting down and destroying Hive after all these years, a new Hive Queen has kidnapped his son Joseph. Slade meets with Adeline, then begins tracking down Hive once again.
I have a question. What's the difference between abandoning your son for his protection and sending your son to live far away for his protection?
I don't think for Joseph there was a difference. And I think that's part of his resentment for his parents, both of his parents in this film. I did think it was kind of cool to see how afraid everyone was of Deathstroke as he was hunting down Hive. Like one guy straight up just like shoots himself in the head rather than talk to him.
That's crazy.
Just shows like Deathstroke's reputation. Now, the trail eventually leads to Bronze Tiger, who reveals Jackal is alive and now in charge of Hive, as well as the location of the Hive Queen, before Deathstroke kills him.
And of course, it was in a hollowed out volcano. Very cliche, but it kind of worked because the architecture of the villain group Hive was like very honeycomb, and I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's straight from the comics. Slade makes his way to the island fortress and confronts Lady Shiva, who he surrenders to and who takes him to the Hive Queen. Now, by the time Slade was making his way to the island, I thought we were gearing up for the third act. Like when I looked at the video timeline and realized the film wasn't even halfway over, I was like, holy shit, this is not going to end well.
I was honestly pretty surprised when Jericho turned on Deathstroke.
The Hive Queen reveals to Slade that Hive plans on using Joseph's psychic powers to manipulate world leaders to do Hive's bidding. Slade breaks Joseph out of his glass prison, only to find it was all a trap, that the Hive Queen was Slade's daughter, that Joseph wanted to remain with her, and Slade is shot to death before falling off of a cliff.
Now, why the deception? I wonder, why did Jericho go through all of that, escaping the base with his father and everything like that? Was it just for the theatricality of it? Was he just really intent on duping his dad for that brief amount of time?
I guess so. I think they really just wanted that big gotcha, fuck you moment.
They should have just shot him. I mean,
right?
Honestly.
Well, they did a bunch of times. That was kind of crazy. I did find it kind of funny how often Deathstroke in this film did the hidden explosive in the palm of his hand trick. He did it 4 times, including when he broke Joseph out of his cell, and even at the very end of the film when he blew up himself and Jackal while they were free fall fighting through the sky. He just did it way too many times.
You should have done that in our duel with Deadpool.
He should have. Just anytime Deadpool got close. Oh, you have a bomb on you.
Yep.
Now, it turns out Adeline placed a tracker in Deathstroke after kissing him in the park and had been tracking him the whole time. She rescued him and helped him recover from the bullet wounds. We learn later that she was hacking the Hive servers while Slade was on the island, which helped them learn about Project Jericho, Hive's plan to create chaos to draw out the world leaders and brainwash them.
I was super confused when I was watching this when Adeline kissed Slade, because it just felt so out of character. I was like, what? Why? Where did that come from? Is she just really horny from being single all these years or something?
Jeez.
Why'd she kiss him? Didn't make sense for the longest time until that reveal where she did implant a tracker in him through that kiss. And I was like, okay, yeah, makes sense.
I thought she was just kissing him goodbye. I didn't really think anything of it.
Yeah.
But it was kind of a cool character moment for her when she revealed that, yeah, I embedded a tracker in your digestive system with my tongue.
Yeah, I'm so glad they did that instead of just having her be real milfy.
Sure, yeah. I kind of didn't appreciate the animators crashing a plane into the Golden Gate Bridge. It was way too evocative of 9/11. We've seen that in real life.
Yeah, and with the bombs in the Capitol building, which was kind of evocative of the Pentagon crash too.
Wasn't appreciated. Now, as Hive carries out its terrorist operations and tries to hijack Air Force One, Slade and Adeline take out the enemy planes and finally confront Jackal, just after Rose and Joseph try to double-cross him. Jackal disables Joseph, Rose kills Lady Shiva as she was fighting Adeline, and Slade causes Jackal to blow a hole in their aircraft that causes them both to get blown out into the sky. As they fall to their deaths, and as Jackal pummels Slade midair, Slade realizes that Adeline was right, that he wasn't a knight, but that he could protect them from himself and Jackal, and he blew both of them up.
Lady Shiva's death made my jaw drop. Like, I did not see that coming. It was pretty brutal. I was a big fan of the way the character was actually portrayed in this because she seemed as dangerous as she claimed. And just to see her go out like that was a bit of a shock.
It's kind of a cheap shot, but also, like, how else was she going to go out?
Right. Yeah, she's just too good.
At the end of the film, Adeline, Joseph, and Rose are back home. Joseph looks back through his book, Knights and Dragons, before repeating his father's line from earlier in the film, "The past is dead." And I think that was in reference to his father. As Adeline offers to let Rose stay with them, Joseph goes outside for a walk, seemingly senses his father's mind is still alive, and smiles at the moon. That's when
what happened there?
Yeah, I think so. And that's when we cut back to the opening shot of Slade, bloody and injured on the shore of the beach, and an eye opens. That's the last shot of the film. Now, despite how cheap the film looked and how simple the story was, it was deceptively complex thematically, and I found a lot to appreciate. That said, the film would have been better with better animation, with some better performances, and with some better editing to trim some of the fat. There were quite a few scenes I left out of the plot breakdown because they just weren't relevant to the story, and I think they were just there to fill up 12 episodes of the web series. So taking everything into consideration, the good and the not so good, I give this film 3.5 stars.
I would totally agree with that rating. I think with just a few touch-ups, this movie could have been a 4 or 4.5 star film. But, the plot holes and some questionable character decisions within the story kind of lower it down a few pegs. That along with the animation. I do think this film would have been much more impressive with a little bit better animation. Despite the fact that the look was heavily stylized, I did like the shading and the Band-Aid dots that were interspersed.
Yeah, for the lighting effect, that was pretty cool.
I think they could have gone even further than that, though.
I agree. But again, this is probably the cheapest animation project that DC has ever put out. So we'll see if this leads to more Deathstroke projects in the future. But that does it for this review. Let us know what you thought about the movie by writing to us at dynamicduelpodcast@gmail.com or by visiting us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. You can find links to all of our accounts by visiting our website, dynamicduel.com.
And on our site, you could also find a link to our Patreon page where we offer bonus content. Check it out right after this episode.
Also check out on dynamicduel.com a link to our merch store where we sell t-shirts, hoodies, stickers, and more with our Dynamic Duel No Prize artwork.
Who are you drawing this week? Are you going to draw Deathstroke or Bronze Tiger?
I should be drawing Bronze Tiger, but I really want to draw Deathstroke. I didn't get a chance to draw him back when we did our Deathstroke versus Deadpool episode, so I think I might just draw him.
Alrighty. Well, our next episode is going to be our first big movie review since the coronavirus pandemic has hit. We're going to go to the theaters, so wish us luck. We're going to go see New Mutants. I'm excited and a little bit nervous at the same time, but I'll be wearing my mask and the seat spacing is pretty spread out in the movie theater, so I feel relatively safe and I'm really excited to see the movie.
Yeah, me too. Actually, I'm super excited. I just enjoy the theater experience, and I think the marketing for this film has been pretty killer.
Yeah, so look forward to that next week. We want to remind everyone again to please subscribe to our show if you haven't already, or please leave a rating or a review on your platform of choice. Sharing this show on social media or in person is also a big help for us.
But that does it for this episode. We want to give a big thanks to our executive producers, Ken Johnson, Jace Crump, and John Speas for helping make this podcast possible. And we'll talk to you guys next week. Up, and away.
True believers.
If you're a gamer and you're not taking advantage of free-to-play games, you're selling yourself short. Selling, free-to-play, you guys see what I did there?
Dear God.
Still funny.
No one's gonna tune in?
Yeah, it's like a dumpster fire. A dumpster fire full of skunks.
But at least the price is right. Join Scott, Jeff, and Elliot on Budget Arcade as we play, review, and rate a free-to-play game each week.
Listen every Tuesday wherever you download podcasts. And don't forget to subscribe. Game on.